In 2003, I began production on a film that I believed would be the most epic, most commercial, and therefore the easiest film that I'd ever made in my almost 40 years as an independent documentary filmmaker. Instead, it took 10 years of my professional life and became the hardest film I ever made. It's a film, as was just mentioned, called The Winding Stream, and it's the story of the family at the heart of country music, the original Carter family. And that family not only influenced generations of musicians, but it also influenced someone who married into their family, the legendary Johnny Cash. So when I got this idea for this film, I thought, this is a no-brainer. This is my slam dunk of a film. It's going to have Johnny Cash and cool music and great stories, and I thought this was going to be the easiest film. And I'm not naive about this because I've made films for a really long time, so I was well aware that none of these films are easy on the truly independent level, but they're especially tricky if they're music documentaries because you're dealing with archival footage rights and music rights. So they get very expensive very fast. But I went in with my eyes open, and the reason I was so confident about this film was that my previous film had been a music documentary, and it too had really cool people in it and cool stories and archival footage and music, and it was called Welcome to the Club, and it was a story of the pioneering women of early rock and roll. And that film did really well, and we raised the money quickly, and it went to public television and festivals, and it even got nominated for a 2003 Grammy Award. So I thought, dude, this is my moment, this is it. So I went into The Winding Stream thinking that this was the thing. You probably have heard of the metaphor of the frog in the water, which is when you take a frog and you throw the frog into a pot of boiling water, and it immediately knows it's in the wrong environment, in a very imperiled environment. It leaps right out. And then you can take that same frog and put it in a pot of tepid water and crank up the heat, and it kind of thinks there's something going on, but doesn't quite know, and it boils to death. And I'm here to tell you, yes, I was the frog. Because I thought that everything I knew from filmmaking was going to apply and continue to apply to my future. Even though the environment was changing around me radically, I had no idea for a very long time. And I kept thinking there was something up, but I wasn't sure. But meanwhile, I think I've earned the right to go to this next level with my filmmaking, and I'm going to apply all the lessons from my last film, and it will make perfect sense with this new film. And in the beginning, that's how it seemed. In fact, I was very encouraged at the outset. We got some grant money, and I went charging off, and I interviewed Johnny Cash in one of his last interviews, and I interviewed Roseanne Cash, and I met family members and did filming with them, and all of this seemed to be going well. I made a demo, which is usually what I would do, and I shopped it around, which is what I would always do. And I was getting good response, which was kind of how I thought it would go. But unfortunately, what didn't go with that was money. People kept saying, cool project, and then nothing happened. And this went on for several years, where the project was limping along with my efforts, scraping together money and going and filming something and trying to push the project uphill. But it never really got the traction I expected after everything I knew and everything I'd learned before. And I started comparing notes with my filmmaker friends, and they were in the same boat, and they were going, gee, we don't know, it's kind of hot in here. And nobody could figure out what was happening. And I finally got extremely seriously depressed. And I'm pretty buoyant usually, and I don't usually let my work get to me that much, but I really hit a place. I remember the end of one year just going on a crying jag at the end of the year. It was just beyond me. I couldn't make it move. And after this cathartic jag, I started thinking about what I did know. And I did know a few things. One of them was that I knew that I had never not finished a film before, and I knew that I didn't want it to start with this film. The second thing was that I believed in this film, and I knew that other people thought it was good too. There was just some piece missing. So I believed that it had something important to say culturally, and I thought people would like it if they got a chance to see it. And so I thought it would be entertaining and informative, which is the highest calling in documentary filmmaking. And then the other thing was that I felt like I owed a debt of honor to my subjects, that these people, a lot of them gave me their last interviews. The interview I did with Johnny Cash was the second to last one he did, and he was talking about people that mattered more to him than anything, including his mother-in-law, Maybelle, who was one of the original Carters. And I kept thinking, I can't dishonor this by not finishing. I've got to get this thing done. So I knew I had to hit reset. And so I went to a friend of mine who is a benefactor of the film, but also a good friend now. And she and I talked, and I just felt like I was getting in my own way. And she thought maybe I needed to see beyond the environment I was in. And so together we started this idea of bringing in what we called the brainstormers. And we invited a bunch of people whom had nothing to do with filmmaking. They weren't of my environment, they weren't of my world, they weren't in my pot of water with the other filmmakers swimming around. And they were restaurant owners and a hotel person and someone from a chamber of commerce and fundraising people and craft brewers. We had like this whole array of successful business people who knew nothing about film. And we got a professional facilitator to come in, and over a period of a year, we met 3 times. And each time it got like boot camp for me, where they would just tear me down in a nice way and ask me all these penetrating questions that I was like, I got nothing. You know, they really challenged every assumption I had about filmmaking. And made all the more painful because they were asking questions that made perfect sense in their understanding of the world. And I started to see things as they were seeing them. And after working with them for a year, I devised a plan based on a lot of the stuff we talked about. One of the things we talked about was, this was very early on, but we did crowdfunding. I did an early Kickstarter campaign, which was very successful. And then I really doubled down on social media use, and I had a social media presence, but I took it more seriously, and we started to spread out our fan base a little more and really bring people into the fold and work on that. And the other thing they talked about was ancillary products like a book and a CD, which at one point I was like, really? A book and a CD? I can't get the film done. But in fact, those things helped fuel the interest in the final film. And I guess it's not accidental that when we started generating all this new energy and new enthusiasm and new things were happening with the project that we could talk about in social media and with our Kickstarter campaign and put that energy out, 2 people came forward at a Kickstarter reward party who identified themselves as entrepreneurs and philanthropists who wanted to give money to the project. And they became our executive producers and provided not only funding, but also some great advice, and got the film to the finish line, and we were able to pay for the music rights and pay for the archival footage rights, and we were done in 2013. Yay! Yay! Following that, the good news was, as was mentioned, we were able to premiere the film at South by Southwest in 2014. Gotten 30 other festivals. It's played now in 75 cities around North America. We launched it on iTunes and Amazon last week, and it'll be on Netflix in a couple of weeks. And we did make a CD soundtrack, and it's out there, and there is a book. So all of that came to pass. So having said all that, I'm not sure that the specifics of what I learned will apply to the next film. In fact, I'm pretty sure they won't. And that's the reality of where we are now, not just in filmmaking, I think in the music business and publishing and uh, books, and frankly, in cab driving, right? I mean, everything's up for grabs now. And that was the real hard reality for me, is that things I thought I knew a month ago don't apply necessarily to what's going on next month even. And that, in that sense, we're all the frogs. We're all swimming in this really uncertain environment where technology and change are concerned. But having said that, I feel like I'm at a point where I can see those things. I can see that we're in flux constantly, and I'm okay with that. And as I look ahead, I know that I have the things that I always had, the values that sustained me when I couldn't figure this out, and that's tenacity, my belief in my work, and my faith and commitment to my subjects, and now I hope a newfound way of being open to ideas. I may always be the frog, but I hope the next time around I'm a little more nimble, and the next time I'll be ready to jump when it gets too hot. Thank you.